Barbarian was really neat. It starts out really boring and dull, and when I was first watching it, I was like, ugh, I don't really like this. But as it goes on, it gets gradually more and more creative and like weird and just really effective. It's hard to talk about this without spoiling anything, so I really can't go into the plot. But I will say that the presentation of it was really interesting. I love how the shot composition was, and I love the atmosphere of everything. And it actually gets really creepy in ways that you don't expect. The acting is good, the music is really cool, and overall I just enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. The one thing I will say is that you need to go into this not knowing anything about it, because if you get spoiled for it, it'll kind of ruin the whole experience. But it's a solid little movie, and it's on HBO Max right now, so definitely go watch it, because it's original and you need to support original things, or else they're just going to keep making the same things over and over and over again. I'm giving this film a thumbs up. I would put a spoiler section on, but to be honest, I don't even want to do that because I don't want to risk spoiling it for anyone, because you don't want to spoil it for you, trust me. Speaking of the same thing over again, I also watched Black Adam. Normally, I don't like to be too harsh on superhero movies, because I feel like that's the cool thing now, to like be super harsh to them. But man, I could feel my brain rotting watching this. This film is like noise. It feels like an AI compiled like the worst aspect of every modern blockbuster. I don't mean to be like snobby or whatever, but like watching this, my brain was like, what are you doing, man? Why are you making me do this? It isn't quite as bad as I thought it would be, but it isn't good by any means. I don't know how to explain it. There's some parts of it that I kind of like, but it just fumbles so many basic aspects of what a movie should do. Like, for example, this movie, the main characters are like the Justice Society, or whatever they're called. But you like don't know them or care about them at all, and they're in a majority of the movie, so it's really hard to like care a lot of the time. I think my favorite was Dr. Fate, because Pierce Brosnan did a really good performance as him. He was almost as good in this film as he was in Mamma Mia. But his performance really just can't save like really underdeveloped character. The rest of the Justice Society were just really annoying, honestly. I could not stand Noah Centineo, I think that's how you say his name. I could not stand him as Atom Smasher. He's basically just Deadpool, but even more obnoxious. Really, the Tornado Girl, why was she even in the movie? She did nothing. She was a nothing character. And Hawkman, he was really boring too. He plays a pretty big role in it, but he's such an empty character. You don't really care about him at all. And I just feel like if they were gonna make the Justice Society such a big part, they should have developed them in more meaningful ways. Like, literally all they do is they come to Black Adam, and he hasn't even done anything aside from protect people, and they're like, you're bad, you can't do that. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna be bad anyway, I don't care. And like, I don't know, they make them come across as like buffoons. I don't know if that was intentional. Maybe Dwayne Johnson wanted to seem cooler by comparison, but they're just really obnoxious. And aside from Dr. Fate, I just really could not stand to see them in the movie. And the thing about this movie, though, is that like even though a lot of the characters suck and are annoying or boring, is that you won't even really notice that, because 90% of this movie is just them beating the crap out of each other. It's like that scene from the last episode of Invincible. If it were just for like an entire movie, it's just like slow-mo scenes of them electrocuting each other or smashing into walls and like punching each other. It's such a like brainless movie, and I think the superheroes, even though they claim to be good, I think they do more damage than the villain does. I'll get to the villain in a second, but like the movie is just really like ate brain, and everyone's just smashing each other. And that did make it a little more entertaining, but after a while I was just saying to myself, I'm like, what am I even watching at this point? It's just nothing but mindlessness, and if you don't have a tolerance for that, you're gonna hate this movie. What else is there? Black Adam himself was okay. I'm not really a huge fan of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but I think in this movie he was alright. He didn't really emote too much, but also the character isn't very deep. He kind of just said the same thing with every kind of cadence and whatever. He was like, "Ugh, get away from me. I'm not a good guy." And also, he says like multiple times in the movie, he's like, "I'm not a good guy," but he really isn't a bad guy either. Like, they make him out to seem like this jaded warrior, but all he does is protect other people. Like the little boy in the movie, who's also pretty annoying, but he's a child, so I guess he has an excuse. But he's really nice to the boy, and he like takes care of the boy and his mom, who play a surprisingly large role in the movie. But he never comes across as mean. I think the meanest thing he does is when he wakes up at the beginning, he tells the boy like, "Move out of my way." And that's it. He's really not a bad guy. I don't understand the tagline for this movie. It's like, the world doesn't need any more heroes or something. But I don't think that fits the way he's portrayed in this movie. He's really not a bad guy. He kills the king at the beginning, but the king had like a bunch of slaves and was like forcing people to do work and was like killing them for fun. So I don't think that was really unjustified. And he was killing all the people. Oh yeah, by the way, this movie has like tries to have this weird Middle Eastern like allegory, but it doesn't work because the movie's so silly. Anyway, he kills a bunch of the people who are like terrorizing these poor people in whatever they call the city, I don't remember, but he like protects them. He's like, "I'm gonna free this city from the people who are like oppressing it and are like the soldiers." It's like a police state basically. He's like, "Yeah, I don't like this. This is my home and I'm gonna protect it." And then I think he's justified in that, and the Justice League come to him. They're like, no, you can't do that. You can't free these people." I'm like, whose side am I supposed to be on in this movie? The movie opens with like this opening monologue about Black Adam's like past, and I honestly think you could have made a much better movie if you just like focused on that, like had his backstory play out in full. I think that could have been a decent movie. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to put the Justice Society in there or whatever, all the cameos, but it would have been a more interesting story than what we got. Like in present day, Black Adam is kind of a boring character because there's nothing he really wants. Like, I don't know much about the Black Adam character in the comics, but his whole relationship is with Shazam, but he doesn't even care about Shazam in this movie. So there's absolutely nothing for him to do. Whenever he's not punching the Justice Society, he's just kind of standing there because he doesn't really have much of a character in this movie. The CGI in this movie, I don't normally like to complain about CGI because I feel like there's more to a movie than the special effects, but the CGI in this movie is atrocious. It looks like it's from like 2006. It looks like straight out of Injustice, like with the way they move and the animation. It looks awful. I don't know how the movie was released in this state. I feel so bad for the poor animators who were probably rushed and treated horribly during the process of this movie. But yeah, like seriously, Dr. Fate in this movie, when he's animated, he does not look real at all. He looks like a cartoon. He looks half the time like a cartoon because it's mostly just action sequences. But I think when Black Adam flies, it looks okay, and everything else looks terrible. There's not like a single good effect in this movie. And also, just by the end, the whole movie just devolves into like chaos. Well, it was chaos the whole time, but it just devolved. It feels like the fake movie scenes from The Boys. It even has like the same color palette. Just by the third act of this movie, it just devolves into like complete garbage, and it was really just astounding to see. I don't know how people approved of it. I guess I should talk about spoilers now. Not that there's really much to spoil, honestly. So basically the villain of this movie is the most generic demon you can think of. His name is Sabak, I think. But man, he is like, I think the worst villain I've ever seen in any movie, regardless of the comic book genre. He is like so poorly defined. He has absolutely no personality aside from evil demon. He's just boring. He's almost even worse than the guy from Suicide Squad, and that was the other terrible villain. And the way they put him in the movie, he's like, you could almost just take him out. He doesn't do anything aside from give an excuse for an action scene at the end and give an excuse for Black Adam to come back after he surrendered himself. But he's such an awful character. And comic book movies don't really have like good villains. That's just kind of a rule for some reason. But even by like the average comic book standards, he's just terrible. And he's like not even a character. I hated him so much. Design is stupid. He looks like a stock image, like just a stock character they had, a stock devil character they had lying around. I thought DC was supposed to be like known for having like cool villains, but this one was just, he was so like appallingly lame. I really struggle to say anything about him other than that. I was just kind of insulted by just how horrible he was. I feel like it would have been more interesting to have Black Adam be the villain. That's how they advertised the movie, but it's not really how it plays out. They don't do the Suicide Squad thing where like he learns to become a better person. Like by the end of the movie, he's like almost the same person, kind of. I don't know, he's kind of an arc, but it's very poorly developed. But it's weird because the movie like wants to tell you that he's a bad guy at the end of the movie, but he really isn't. He like worked with all the heroes and they became more camaraderous. Is that a word? I don't know. They were more amicable. But the end credit scene, I guess we're in spoilers already. The end credit scene is like Amanda Waller being like, "You need to stand down, Black Adam. You're bad." He's like, "Nah, I'm not gonna stand down." And then Henry Cavill Superman shows up and is like, "We're gonna need to have a talk, Black Adam." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. The Justice Society or whatever was cool with Black Adam, it seemed like. Like, why are you trying to gaslight me into thinking something else? The biggest problem with this movie isn't that it's really bad, it's just so, like, sloppy. Like, nothing is done properly. There are, like, some interesting ideas in the movie, but they're so, like, poorly developed, and most of it is just slow-mo punching people. And I feel like it could have been more. I am a firm believer that comic book movies can be more than just theme park rides, but this one really does not help that case at all. It is like very much what detractors of the genre say. Everything is done so weirdly, it feels like you're watching a sequel to a movie that doesn't exist. Like, it feels like this is like Justice Society 2 or whatever, but there's no Justice Society 1, so I don't care about anything that's going on. The movie also tries to like be funny, but it just like isn't for most of it. It's weird. It's trying to be like a super dark DC movie, but it's also trying to be like a campy Marvel movie, but it's like the weakest campy kind of Marvel, where it's just constant quip and quip and quip, and it's like, oh, just stop talking, Atom Smasher. Mo Amer is in the movie, and I feel like I don't really know much about Mo Amer other than that my dad and sister like him, but I didn't feel like anything he did really landed. It wasn't like the worst thing ever, but it just felt really odd and out of place. The whole thing with like the family, Black Adam stays with a family, and it's kind of weird. The way they describe Black Adam, again, they make him seem like a bad guy, but he's like kind of just becomes their pet. Like the little boy is like, "Save me, Black Adam," and he's like, "Okay, I will." And he kind of just, he's like so aloof that he's like a pet. He's like their dog, basically. And I don't know anything about Black Adam, but I don't see him doing that from what I know about him. This movie kind of felt like Venom a little bit, but it was way less boring. I'll give it that. It was less boring than Venom 2, but it wasn't good by any means. It was just nonsense for 2 hours. I think the plot changes like 3 or 4 times. It feels like it feels like you're watching a bunch of different movies like all at once. I don't know, if you're looking forward to this, I guess I recommend it, but if you're like kind of wary, you're not gonna like it at all. I'm giving Black Adams a thumbs down.